So basically all that happens is the company stops sending all this money to the federal government for taxes, and they start paying the shareholders over an 8 to 12 year time frame. And so the shareholders get paid, the employees end up for free, and it creates an incredible, powerful transfer of wealth from one or two families to 1,600 people over time.
Hey there, and welcome to Under the Roof, the official podcast of Baker Roofing Company. I'm Todd Kavanaugh.
And I'm Matt Elbon, and we're here to connect the dots between field and office, leadership and crew, values and action.
In each episode, we dive into the stories, lessons, and updates that matter to our team.
From safety and career growth to company milestones and good old-fashioned storytelling, it's all about living out what makes Baker, Baker. Let's get into it.
Hey there, and welcome back to Under the Roof.
I'm Matt Elbon.
And I'm Todd Kavanaugh. Today, we're sitting down with Brian Allen, President and CEO of Precision Walls.
Brian's got a unique perspective on what we're all kind of going through here at Baker. He's a second-generation owner who took his family's 40-year-old business and made the decision to transition it to 100% employee ownership back in 2019.
And he's not just someone who's been down this road before. He's now serving on Baker's ESOP board as an independent board member. So he's both helping to advise our journey and watching us experience what he's already lived through.
We're going to talk about that family succession, the decision, what he's learned in almost 6 years as an employee-owned company, and what it's like to grow and even acquire other companies as an ESOP. Welcome, Brian. We appreciate you being here with us today.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Glad to be here.
Start off with something, kind of an easy question, something I always like to ask folks when I first meet them and talk to them. What's the last book you've read, and what'd you take away from it?
It's a great question. I'm reading one right now. It's How to Build the Life You Want.
Okay.
Yeah, and it's just talking about, finding purpose and what's most important, slowing down your life a little bit and being on purpose for the things that you want in life and your relationships with people and the importance of that.
That sounds like a good one for someone in your role to read, and probably a good one for everyone to read too. So
yeah, we've got a lot of great recommendations. We've talked about actually adding some kind of like recommended list from the podcast, even sending out some of these books to people that want them. So that sounds going to make a note of that.
I actually just finished the two that Mark said he was reading. I'd got them on Audible, and I've been listening to them as I've been driving around, but just finished both of those in the past week. So they were both pretty good. So
that reminds me of going back to this one's funny, Crisis in Costa Rica, the 1948 Revolution. That is what John Matthews recommended.
He did. That was one of the ones he recommended. The other one.
That's right. The geopolitical impact of copper, I think, right. was one of the ones. So,
underground minerals.
Yeah. Brian, your dad, as I understand it, started Precision Walls in 1977. With what I read, a standard he called no such thing as good enough. That's a pretty high bar. What was it like growing up in that family, and how did that shape how you ran your business?
It was great. I tell people this all the time. The two greatest things my parents did for me was, one, they stayed together, which was very difficult to do. My dad was in construction and really hard business at the time. And so that was very good for the three kids. I'm the youngest of three. And the second thing he did is he taught us that it was a privilege to work. That it wasn't something we had to do. It was something we got to do. And so we've never, ever looked at work as something we had to do. It was more of, we were fortunate to be able to work. And so, every break, we were working somewhere, sweeping floors on a job site or something. So it wasn't a lot of free time. Kids with too much free time get in trouble. He didn't give us much free time. So it was, that was one of the two things that he did really good for us that kept us moving.
It's funny you mentioned that phrase, get to and have to. I've used that with my teams over the years and at work, but also just coaching sports with kids. And look, you get to play this sport. You get to work. You don't have to do this. And it is a privilege. It's also a blessing, right? To be able to physically be able to work and physically be able to play a sport if you're a kid or whatever. But definitely a shift in mindset these days.
Absolutely.
So for people who maybe don't know Precision Walls, you guys are consistently ranked in the top 10 specialty contractors in the country by ENR. Give us the quick version of what you do and how you got there.
So we started off years ago. We were a demountable partition company. When Dad started the company in 1977, for those first 10 or 12 years, we didn't do a ton of drywall. We did some, but mostly demountable partitions until about the mid 90s. And as that fell out of favor, we started doing more and more drywall. And when I got out of college, I worked here as a kid, went through college, got out of grad school. We were struggling, to really do well on drywall work. So me being young and aggressive, didn't know any better. I just wanted to become, the not the largest, but the best drywall company on the planet. And we talk about it all the time. And we had a good run, from 97, 98 to about 2015. I remember the bonding companies came in and they were somewhat bragging on us on our run and how well we had done. And at the time, we might have been 5th largest drywall company by ENR, decent margins and all this. And less than 2% of our revenues was outside of the drywall business in 2015. And it wasn't sustainable. We needed more diversification. And so we set a goal in 2016, I think it was end of 15, that by 2019, that we wanted 15% of our revenues outside of the drywall business. And I remember one of our team members on our executive team looked at me and said, Brian, do you realize that's like $30 or $40 million with a new business we got to find? And I said, well, I think we've got to do it or we're going to be in trouble. And so we hit 22%. And today we're almost at 50% of our revenues outside of the drywall, your strictly drywall business. Now, I'm so proud of our team with that is that our drywall business has been growing at over 15% a year since 2012. So it's not like we grew a percentage against something shrinking. And so that's harder to grow a percentage when you're growing your drywall business. So pretty diversified in division 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. So we purchased a glass company in 2023 to add to our ESOP to get more diversification. So we're on that track of diversifying. And back to ESOP, I think one of your questions was, how do we get to become an ESOP? And for those that don't know much about ESOP, don't feel bad. I think in 2017, I'm not sure I could spell it, didn't know a whole lot about it. We got approached. We had a lot of growth from about 2000 to about 2016. And I'm a shareholder, a steward for my family. Again, one of 3 kids, the person that's running the company. And so a private equity group approached us about being a platform. And they wanted to use us to grow across the country. And really good offer. The guys in this PE firm were very smart. I was impressed with them. But it was probably the worst 16 months of my life. And I'm so glad I had that experience. Extremely smart, but very short-term thought process. It's a quarter-to-quarter thought about profitability. And we had never thought that way. I walked away from that deal not because it was a bad deal. I walked away from the deal because it wasn't good for our culture and it wasn't good for our employees long term. And that was in 2018. And I started, and through this process, I was researching top 10 ENR companies, who owns them in our space, specialty. And I figured out there was 3 or 4 of them that were ESOPs. And so I started researching ESOPs. I actually traveled and met with 3 different companies in 3 different spaces that were ESOPs. And I met with the owners, the executives, some field employees, and learned as much as I could about the positive and negatives of ESOPs, and kind of fell in love with the process. And it's incredible. It's kind of good for everyone. It's great for the owners because you get, maybe not the highest price, but you get market value as a shareholder. The employees end up with the company for free, basically, because ESOP companies, now the employees pay on what they get for taxes, and the shareholders, when they get paid for the company over time, they have to pay taxes. But when you become 100% employee owned, you stop paying federal tax at the company level. Most states don't require the state tax either. North Carolina is one of them. So basically all that happens is the company stops sending all this money to the federal government for taxes, and they start paying the shareholders over an 8 to 12-year time frame. And so the shareholders get paid, the employees end up for free, and it creates an incredible, powerful transfer of wealth from one or two families to 15, 1,600 people over time. And I just think it's incredible. And it's not going anywhere. It's been around since the 70s. And one of the reasons I don't think it's going anywhere is both parties like it. If from a political standpoint, the Republicans love it and the Democrats love it for different reasons. So they keep making it better, and more companies are converting to ESOPs. So I'm super excited about it, more excited than ever, because now I'm working for the retirement of our employees. And there's nowhere else that you can take a field employee who would normally not have access to that type of wealth creation, and over a 30-year career, double their 401k and help that family retire more comfortably. I mean, it's just an incredible opportunity.
You mentioned something that had my ears perked up when you said it. You were, obviously, we're in a little bit of a growth mode here as well. You threw some numbers out there. You said in 2015, if I remember right, you're less than 2% of your business was not the drywall side of it.
It was outside of the drywall business.
You wanted to get it up to 15%, and you did that in 4 years-ish?
We got to 22% in the first 5 years. And I would say 10 years later, we're at 48% of our revenue.
Was it easy? My question is this. Was it easier to grow it pre-ESOP or post-ESOP?
I'm not sure if I could relate. The ESOP was in 2019. I'm not sure that I could say that I saw a big difference in the growth as much as, because here's what's going to happen. I mean, for the new employees that are in it, and when I do all the new employee orientations around the ESOP, it takes about 4 years for people to really believe this. And it's because they've worked other places where people have told them they were going to do something and they didn't do it. So it took about 4 years for our field employees to say, wow, right? Because they have to start seeing that account balance in that retirement fund grow. And so this was a big year. We're in our 6th year. And this was the biggest year. When that statement came out, October 15th, the number of texts I got from employees of the excitement of what their account balance was incredible. So it does take a little time. They have to start seeing it in their account and believing that it's actually their money when they retire to get some really push around it.
It's buy-in, right? I mean, it's what it is. They're buying in as, like, from a mental perspective, it's an emotional buy-in.
That's right. And so if you a lot of education up front, you get that ownership mentality that you think like owners now, and that you're really working for your retirement. So a lot of discussion around that and what that looks like, get them thinking in that direction that, hey, we're not just working for some company's profits anymore. We're working for us. And this is going to our retirement accounts. And so if someone, and I say this in a lot of our new employee orientations, I said, if we got 1,700 people, someone is probably taking advantage of our team right now. And I need your help, because every dollar that they're taking from our company, they're taking it from you. And so if you can get that mindset of not wasting things because we're working toward retirement. The other thing that I've noticed over time is that people are more open with training and teaching, because before there was a little bit, if I teach this person that I'm mentoring a little too much, maybe they'll take my job. Well, now the thought process is more of, I want them as good as me, because the better they are, the better our team is, the more successful we are, and the more we can grow, and maybe I have a bigger opportunity somewhere else.
Yeah, I imagine it's good. It's good for us to hear. We're coming up on our first statements, hopefully next month, and we are starting to kind of prepare, and we're even going to do some messaging like, it's probably not going to be what you expect. And so it sounds like that year 4, at least from an employee standpoint, to really catch the fire of what we're doing right now. I imagine, I'm curious, when there was some day when you told your siblings, and there was a day when you told the employees, hey, I think we should do ESOP. How was that received? Like, what was that conversation like?
I think at first it was a little fear, because they didn't know what it was. And so there was some fear about change. What are we doing here? What's going to happen from the From the shareholders, it was more of a, we're going to lose control and, this whole thing. And so the wonderful thing about an ESOP is that all of our employees become employee owners, but nothing happens or changes in the leadership structure. The wonderful thing about an ESOP is that the leaders can think about what's going to happen the next decade, not what's important the next quarter, because nothing changes your culture, your values, your mission statement. And so the wonderful thing is once you can explain that and then how it works and how we're working for the retirement, but we get to control our culture and keep the great things. Not all private equity groups, but a lot of private equity groups that purchase or buy a company, they're looking to flip this thing in 4 or 5 years. So all of a sudden, that buying that new piece of equipment that's going to really pay off for us in 3 years does not become a quarter-to-quarter decision that they want. Where we kept you could think of the next 5 years with an ESOP. It just, the legacy continues of your values, your principles, your mission statement. Nothing really changes. And employees don't leave and say, I'm an employee owner, I'm going to go fire everybody now. The leadership structure kind of stays the same. So keeping that stuff the same as much as possible gets people more comfortable. And then really it's just an extra retirement benefit.
Can you give us a concrete example, whether it's a moment or a person where you saw someone really kind of catch that fire or they're showing ownership thinking? Was there something that you observed where you're like, wow, this is really cool, the way I'm seeing some behavior change a little bit or really embrace that culture of an ESOP that maybe you hadn't seen before in that person or in that situation?
Yeah, I would say that I've seen field supervision make decisions on a job site that would help us long-term versus ensuring we're profitable in the moment. Like, hey, let's make sure that we do the right thing here and install this correctly. Even if we got to tear this up and tear this out and redo it again, this is our quality. This is who we are. And we want the customer to want to give us another job versus, hey, it'll be okay. If we tear this out, it's going to cost us $2,000 on our budget. I'm more worried about, my profitability on this job rather than I'll let someone else worry about whether we keep this customer next. There's more of a mindset of a long-term thought of we need to keep customers that love us so that we can continue to do this. And so sometimes, in order to do the right thing, we might not make as much money, but it's more of a long-term thought of keeping great customers.
Your dad's principle of no such thing as good enough sounds super similar to our motto of always good work, right? Has the ESOP changed how your team thinks about that standard or deepened it? Or what has been like the receptivity of your team since the ESOP to that principle? I
would think that, at least we're talking about this a lot, is that we're trying to get people to make a personal commitment to their quality level. And so I say a lot to them, if you're not willing to sign your name that you did this, then you need to redo it. And if I can get them to take a personal commitment to quality, like if we're installing a door frame, if we have them initial in the strike that they did it, there's something about putting your personal name on something you installed that gives you a pride that you want to do it better. And so if you connect that with, hey, we're all employee owners, we're all working to our retirement, what do you want your legacy to be? And you're doing it right the first time. And so I feel like we say it all the time here. I feel like there's an epidemic issue of installing things correctly. Construction business they're all about speed. That's all they talk about. And we need to slow everybody down and do it right the first time. And there's so many reasons while that will speed up, but also your reputation, budgets, everything. When you install things 2 or 3 times, it doesn't look very good. You don't look like the best subcontractor. And so it's an epidemic. And the thing is, everybody's hiding it. Nobody wants to know that we installed it incorrectly. So our push has been slow down, install it right the first time, be proud of what you install, and make sure you're willing to sign your name to it.
It sounds like you guys have bought into the idea of quality as the catalyst to good growth, right? I mean, that's really what you're saying there. And the team at your company is doing that quality work, willing to sign their name and say, I did that, and I'm proud of what I did, right? Yeah, we want that same thing. So you're now on Baker's ESOP board as an independent board member. What made you want to take on that role? You sound like a pretty busy guy.
Yeah, so I had I believe in the ESOP strategy. I mean, I believe it's an incredible thing to do for the employees, and so I've been talking to Mark about it for 3 or 4 years in our experience. And so if I can help with anything we've learned to help you guys either get there faster or make less mistakes, it gets kind of complicated, right? It's the biggest thing about an ESOP is there's a lot of compliance rules. It is regulated by the IRS and you have to do things a certain way. It's like a retirement plan. And so if I can help, we've got a 6-year kind of jump on you guys with that experience. And so my thought was that maybe I can help in some way with our experiences to help you guys either not make the same mistake or get there a little faster, because you got to make decisions as you go along. And so I can give you our experience and then you could take that, hopefully maybe learn something from it or even do it better than we did it.
Yeah, I love that. Appreciate the help for sure.
Looking back at some of those things, if there is a high level thing that you're like, man, I kind of wish that we had done it this way, or we had said this sooner, or we moved in this direction differently or sooner, is there something that you would kind of identify as saying, hey, this is a key to success in the early years as an ESOP?
I would say, and we did a lot of education, I would say that I would spend more time with education of how it works and connect the dots between the employee and the company's goals as much as possible. And we did a good job of that. I feel like we did. However, we were in the middle of COVID. And so that made it extremely difficult to communicate. It kind of put communication, face to face, even though we worked the entire time, which is pretty interesting. Only 10% of our workforce got COVID, worked every day, but it did make the whole meetings and getting people together and discussing the ESOP much more difficult in 2020. So
and that's at every level, right? That's employees at every level.
It's like they hear you, maybe. And so you got to say it 7 or 8 times. And we did a lot of, when we first did the ESOP, I traveled to every location and did an ESOP presentation for all our employees. And I think what I would have done if I could go back is I would have kept that up every year. And then Q&A, because people are asking more questions now because their statements balances are getting higher, right? And so there's more education now because there's more interest. At first they said, oh, they just put something to benefit in and, whether I'll be around to get it or not. And, they've heard it before, maybe they didn't believe it. Well, now when they start seeing the statement balance, there's a lot more questions, which is very healthy because it makes the education kind of start faster, right? So I would try to increase that education as much as I can early on. The other thing we did is, which is more of a technical thing, is that we were trying to reward some of the employees that got us where we are that might be closer to retirement. So the first 5 years, we gave out more shares than we would have over a 20-year time. And so we did do that. I think that was pretty helpful. But what you got to be careful of is that as people delay retirement, when I talk to a lot of the companies, is you got to make sure you have shares for new employees in 25 years. So you need people retiring and selling these shares back to the company so that you have something to give back out. So really watching that, the number of shares going out every year. And so there's studies you can do on that. You're probably fine for the first 5 or 6 years. Once you get to about the 5th or 6th year, you'll start kind of thinking about sustainability of the shares being, but that's more of a technical administrative thing.
Yeah, I've wondered about that myself as I've kind of seen it down the road. It's like, well, the shares aren't unlimited.
Right.
At some point you have a limited amount of shares.
That's right.
And so you need that cycle of people retiring and having new people come in is all part of the lifeblood of an ESOP, right?
That's right.
All right. So Brian, think about the commercial construction industry and how it's consolidating, right? Private equity, roll-ups, all of that. It seems like every week or 2 or 3 in the news, you're hearing about some company purchase some other company and transfer of ownership. Do you see employee ownership as a way to compete against those types, or is it something just completely different?
I think it's going to be hard for those types to compete with ESOPs. And the reason being is that you're able to keep your culture and structure and your principles and your values the same. When private equity groups are buying up companies, they're all converting them to something. And there's a lot of change going on. When you can be an ESOP and employees get an ownership mindset, I think it's going to be harder to compete with the ESOPs. And I'm not saying in the first 3 or 4 years, but once you get the debt paid off, which is the shareholders paid off, and you get to a point to where cash flow is better, which will happen, and it is really strong, all of a sudden you're in a good spot as an ESOP company because you have everybody aligned with the core values, and they know that you may or may not be sold off. Now, occasionally an ESOP gets sold off to probably a bigger ESOP, but the whole mindset of employee ownership stays. And once that gets traction, I think it's extremely powerful.
Yeah, and also, your ability to attract and retain top talent, which only enables your organization to perform better too. So if you could dream, I know you and Mark have known each other for a while now, and our companies have been closed for some time now too. If you could kind of dream for Baker now as a board member, but also like for our employee base, like what kind of picture would you paint for the next 3, 4, 5, 6 years? We've heard some of that reflected in what's happened at Precision Walls. But what kind of vision would you cast for this company?
I think there's a lot of opportunity for growth at Baker Roofing. I think your biggest opportunities are around the service aspect of your business. And I know that we've got to install new roofs because that creates service as well, right? Because most of the time, Baker Roofing does all of our roofing, all the buildings we have. The wonderful thing about Baker Roofing and the roofing business is that there's a security feel in you've installed my roof and I want you to maintain it. And I think there's a huge opportunity for Baker Roofing, now that they're an ESOP, with an employee ownership mindset of we're going to take care of the roofs across the country. And that employee mindset is that this isn't Baker Roofing's roof. This is my roof. And I'm going to make sure it doesn't leak. And I will make sure it's maintained correctly because it's my reputation as a project manager to make sure this happens. And I'm representing an employee-owned company. I just think there's a lot of opportunity for growth, for service and maintenance with the right people. And the other thing is that might take less people than growing new installations across the country, right? And so anytime we have less people producing a little more revenue, our training, our education gets easier, everything gets easier to get them to the hardest thing we can do, and I think it's our fault as leadership, is we don't share enough with what's going on because we have so much information coming at us. We assume everyone knows. If we could get a superintendent on a roof to get the same information that we have, they'd be unstoppable, right? They're out there every day making the best decisions they can with the information they have. And then sometimes we get upset because they make a bad decision. Well, I promise you, I don't have any employee at Precision Walls that wants to make a bad decision. They made the best decision they could with the information they have. Leadership's problem, and what we should be doing, is sharing as much of our information as possible. The more educated the front lines are, the better they're going to represent our team. And we need to go there and educate. Everything we're learning, we need to be teaching them. That's easier said than done, I realize. But at least it should be the philosophy and the culture that we are going to be open and share what we're learning. And the more we can educate person on the roof that is touching our customer and how they should be treated, and that safety is more important than budget, and that quality of work is more important than budget, and the relationship with the customer is more important than budget, and meeting the schedule is more important than budget. And if we can get that alignment, safety, be proud of what you install, have incredible customer relationships, and when you commit to meeting a schedule, take it as a personal commitment and do everything you can to beat it. And then we'll worry about whether we make money or not. I think the rest of it will take care of, but we've got to teach that. We've got to go talk to them the importance of that. I've even had field employees, I'm very strong on making sure that we treat customers like kings and queens. I say it all the time. If you work at Precision Walls, you've heard that term. We're going to treat our customers like kings and queens. And I've heard field employees think that I'm a little soft, right? Well, They don't understand the better relationship I have with a person, the less that will try to take advantage of us. If you've got someone that you feel like shouldn't be treated like kings and queens, I'll show you someone that needs a friend and for someone to take care of. And if you take care of people, they usually will take care of you. But we've got to put our foot forward first. And we're sitting around waiting for the customer to put theirs out. But our job is to treat them like kings and queens. And I really believe that opportunity exists when you can have great communication with the front lines on what we're trying to accomplish long term. And that is have customers that are huge fans that want us on every job.
And if we can all do that, like it's collective ownership. Everybody is an owner now. And so everybody benefits when that machine is rolling along fine, and serving the customer. So,
and listening to you talk about legacy, personal commitment to quality and all those things, and like it's our job to hold that, protect that. Some might say steward that. That is the idea there, right? And so that, I think that's a huge thing that we need to get to your point. People on the roof, those guys would be unstoppable if they knew everything that we knew. And you're right, leadership, sometimes we struggle to figure out how even to get all that information to everybody. It's not that we don't want to. Sometimes it's hard to figure out how to. It's not as easy as just put it out there. The idea of quality and personal commitment and stewardship and legacy, very similar. It sounds like with your business, obviously with our business, but that's really what we're all about is how do we steward this for the next generation, right? And that's the goal.
Brian, we always like to wrap with one question here. And it's just gives us a little bit of a peek behind your curtain a bit. And so the question is, what's on heavy rotation for you right now? What are you listening to or what are you streaming? That'll give us a little bit of a peek into Brian's life.
Oh, as far as like what we're working on at work?
Oh, more like what you're listening to when you hop in the car and you want to decompress a little bit or...
Yeah, I'd say, we're putting together our new 5-year plan on where we're going and getting people to think what could be possible versus what we think is not possible right now. And the other thing I'm working on is making sure that I believe that as leader, servant leadership is what we should be. Our job is to serve the people that work for us. Our job is to make their job easier. We have to change to do that, not expect them to change. And so getting our leadership thought around our job is to help them be successful. That is your job. If you have to use your title to get something done, you pretty much failed. They should want to follow you. As I tell our leaders all the time, I want you to pretend that you're a preacher on Sunday morning at church. These people showed up and you didn't pay them. If they're not willing to show up because they believe in where we're going, and you've got to use a stick to get people to do the right thing, something's not right here. And so getting this thought around sharing and getting people's opinions and getting them engaged with what we're trying to accomplish and being a part of what we're trying to accomplish, not just being told what to do.
Well, that's fantastic.
And that's it for this episode of Under the Roof. A big thank you to Brian for sharing your story, for the role you're playing in Baker's journey. We certainly appreciate it. And I'm excited about the value you bring and the wisdom and experience you bring as well. It's not every day we get to learn from someone who's already kind of walked the path that we're on. So thank you.
Brian's been very generous with his time and his wisdom, both in this conversation and in his work with our ESOP board. If you're listening and thinking about what employee ownership means, Brian's story and Precision Wall's story is proof that it can work, that you can grow, and that the culture you build matters just as much as the structure you create.
Thanks for listening. And don't forget to follow the podcast so you never miss an episode. Please don't also forget to share it with your crews.
And remember, we shall do good work, at a profit if we can, at a loss if we must, but always good work. See you next time.
Thank you.
That wraps up this episode of Under the Roof. Thanks for joining us and being part of the Baker Roofing family.
If you liked what you heard, share it with your crew. Hit the follow button and keep the conversation going wherever you work.
We're here to keep you informed, inspired, and included, because the more connected we are, the better we work together.
And as always, we'll leave you with this. We shall do good work, at a profit if we can, at a loss if we must, but always good work. See you next time.